I will start with Emilia, who will address what are the implications for civilian life societies of the autonomous weapons systems continue to be unregulated, taking decisions over life and death. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think we've heard a lot at this conference already around the proliferation risks of these systems, not only among states, but to non-state actors and to terrorist groups, and especially thinking towards types of autonomous, anti-personnel autonomous weapons that could target select groups of people and be used as weapons of genocide or even to do individual level assassinations. I think we can take an even broader lens on what the potential risks could be to civilian life. We could imagine a world where these weapon systems are taken up by civilian police forces and used to basically embark on a slippery slope towards AI-enabled authoritarian-style police states. We can imagine these weapons being used at border patrol. We can imagine in a world with a worsening climate crisis that these weapons are used to patrol vital natural resources like water reserves. And I think something that stuck with me from Jan Tallin's keynote yesterday was the idea that the endpoint of an arms race and anti-personnel autonomous weapons creates a world where it's no longer safe to go outside. That was something that I thought was really powerful. In my work, in addition to thinking about civilian risks, I also think a lot about potential benefits of AI. And I think there's a lot we can learn from the history of other dual-use technologies and how do you actually realize a positive future with a dual-use technology. So today, we could be living in a world that has unlimited clean energy to power our industrialized society had we fully realized the peaceful potential of nuclear power. But we don't live in that world, and that is in part because society's first encounter with nuclear technology was in the form of a nuclear weapon and then living for decades under fear of global nuclear war. On top of that, society then experienced nuclear accidents due to inadequate safety engineering. And sort of putting this all together, that not only stigmatized the technology, but then when you sort of go to govern in a landscape of fear and fallout, you end up over-regulating and ending up in a very highly stringent regulatory environment that effectively made safe, ubiquitous nuclear power impossible. And to this day, the physicists, the scientists behind that technology, they carry the weight that their field was used to create weapons, and then they did not realize the good applications. I think we can then turn to the story of biology, which chartered a very different course as a field. So very early on, that field drew red lines. They had the Biological Weapons Convention, and they took certain use cases off the table, like in human genetic engineering. And even without rigid definitions in the BWC or verification mechanisms, that created a very powerful norm. And that norm was forged at also a height of a time of heightened geopolitical tensions during the Cold War. And by taking the weapons issue off of the table, that allowed biology to flourish. I'm very proud today, as a biologist by training, that my field is associated with new therapies for patients and innovations in agriculture and not with mass destruction. So as we turn to AI today, we have to consider there's immense humanitarian potential of this technology. This technology could accelerate every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals and unlock a really positive future for humanity. But to get there, that starts with drawing red lines. And prohibiting AI from killing human beings is what we need to do if we want to unlock that positive future with the technology. And the architects of this technology, the scientists behind it, they're in strong agreement with this. There was a survey done of AI scientists where 74% are opposed to autonomous weapons because they understand this. They want to see their technology used to help humanity and not to hurt it. So I think that's an important piece of the conversation as well, is not only considering the dire humanitarian and security consequences of having autonomous weapons, but also the fact that if we choose that path, we could lose out on all of the great stuff that AI has to offer.
Thank you.
But So we heard about the risk of dehumanization in armed conflict, but I wanted to ask, Emilia, you touched upon a few of these aspects, but if you could go a little bit further on how the risk of autonomous weapon systems may foster dehumanization, and that the erosion of human control and moral engagement in conflict and non-conflict violence, what that could look like. So you touched upon it, but if you could go a little bit more, and especially, of course, what could be done to address it. Emilia, please.
Thank you. I think you put it beautifully, Patricia, in weapons without mercy. I think that framing is one that's really powerful, because by removing sort of the human morality and human decision-making from the decision to take a life, we remove the humanity from that entire landscape. And so the dehumanizing consequences of that are immense, not only in the individual interaction of targeting someone, but also at the scale at which dehumanized killing can be done. So the essential property of AI is an ability to do a task at scale. And so when we think about these idea of small anti-personnel weapon systems that can be mass-produced, what you end up with is a ratio where a single human operator, whether that be someone in the military, whether that be a non-state actor, whether that be someone on border patrol, could activate an unlimited number of weapon systems. And so this is why we need really clear prohibitions, specifically on the anti-personnel point, because you're talking about seeding in the world an ability to do dehumanized killing at scale. And to your point on a treaty, when it comes to mass-produced weapons that are stockpiled, like small anti-personnel systems, this is exactly the kind of thing a treaty can be highly effective at preventing. And so something we hear a lot is like, oh, a treaty wouldn't work with an individual actor in their basement. That's not the scale of the problem here. The scale is mass production and stockpiling, and that's something that we have ample legal and historical precedent that treaties can be highly effective at doing.
We just wanted to ask you, how can we build on this and make this a reality? And what constituencies would be relevant from your perspective for addressing all the aspects to regulate autonomous weapons? We have broadened the discussion here, I think, with many different stakeholders, but really the question of constituencies and how can we build on that. Very brief answers, please, from all of you. Maybe starting with you, Emilia.
Thank you, and I think the point you made before was a great one on autonomous weapons versus AI. We need to remember that AI is not a monolith, and how AI is used in the military and decision support systems and command and control is a topic that warrants a lot of conversation, but I think systems that can engage and target human beings is a pretty discrete thing that we can handle on its own. And the challenge in AI in all domains, civilian and military, is how do we break this off into chunks that we can manage? And I think the prohibitions on targeting people is a very clear one. To the point you made of where do we go from here, I think we have everything that we need. If we all agree that we don't want to live in a world where algorithms decide to kill people, we have what we need to move forward and ensure that we do not live in that world. I think one specific constituency that's maybe worth speaking to in the room is this idea of where do European NATO states fall into this conversation. I think we do see a reluctance to engage or agree to rules that sort of the superpowers that be would not initially choose to engage with. And that effectively allows Russia to dictate the world order. We recognize that in all likelihood, some of the major superpowers like the US and Russia and China may not be the initial signatories of a treaty. And that's okay, because from a strategic perspective, that should be the price that we're willing to pay to safeguard our future. And points been made on the panel that defending yourself against these systems is a very different thing than actually having these systems. And we've seen this before with the landmine treaty, right? The US did not ratify that treaty yet in modified behavior. So I think step one is getting a treaty, and step two is having other countries align with that global norm.
Thank you. Do we need to prohibit and regulate autonomous weapon systems? Because otherwise it would be a dangerous precedent that humanity would be off-centered in its relations to technology. Emilia, please.
Yeah, so we think about this a lot because in our DNA as an organization, we're not a disarmament organization, we're a technology organization. And when we think about AI as a technology, this is the most powerful technology humanity will ever develop. It's going to touch every aspect of our lives and every aspect of our society. And to Patricia's point, there's robust conversations about where do we draw lines with AI in civilian applications, be it self-driving cars, be it algorithmic bias in job hiring. And yet there's this conversation that's completely disconnected, which is, are we going to let AI decide to kill people? Right? And so if we as a global society want to ensure that our future with AI is a positive one and that we are unlocking all of that benefit and not realizing the downside, if we can't get this decision right, we're dooming all of those other decisions we have to make on the civilian side about what are acceptable and unacceptable uses of the technology. So to me, this is a very critical moment on the targeting of people.
Thank you.